I think there has been a switch to preferring a four-letter label than when I was growing up. Amateur diagnosis and personality tests are widely available online. So we take the test, we get the result, and we think, that's great. I know who I am and why I do the things that I do. And we wear this initialism like a badge of honour. But for me, I think the danger of trying to fit yourself into a neat little box and limiting your self-investigation to that point is that it doesn't allow us any room to grow. And if you did take a look back on the last week of your life, if you picked out a spot where you had an interaction that left you feeling a bit miffed, a bit dejected, and you thought, why has this happened to me again? You're not stuck in a category, you're stuck in a loop. In Freudian psychoanalytic theory, that phenomenon of why does this always happen to me is called the repetition compulsion. And Freud posited that the pleasure principle, the instinctual drive towards pleasurable experiences, was the most powerful motivation for a human being. That is until he recognized the repetition compulsion. And to understand what's at work here, we've got to look at how personalities are developed in childhood, because to a child, the world is a wondrous, chaotic place. And relationships with parents, caregivers, siblings can often leave children feeling let down or uncomfortable. So what happens to that feeling? It gets stored in the unconscious as a template of how to navigate the world with familiarity. And Freud says that whatever is repressed will seek to be expressed. So the unconscious mind hatches a plan to put us in the same scenario over and over again. So what's wild to think about is that while we present as mature adults, underneath it, we are simply our oldest childhood structures and templates playing out in the here and now. So why would the unconscious hatch a plan to put you in the same toxic relationship with the same micromanaging boss time and time again? Well, the exact motivation behind the repetition compulsion has been and is still debated, whether if it's to get an opportunity to have a reparative experience with someone who represents that childhood parent figure, or whether if it's to justify a script decision you made about your life and the world as a child, like people are unreliable. You will feel justified when you are let down, because you can say, I knew it, people will always let me down. So whether the unconscious mind is trying to finally put a bad relationship to rest, or it's going to pay out and justify your worldview, we can agree that it's quite a powerful phenomenon that we can prove anecdotally. Take your friend who was in a toxic relationship, for example. They're in that relationship for many years, and the relief that you feel when they finally leave them, only to introduce you to a carbon copy in their new partner some months later. We're so adept at casting the dramas from our childhoods that we'll teach the actors in the roadshow how to play their roles. So how do we stop putting ourselves in harm's way time and time and time again? Well, we can do a bit of self-investigation. At least if we can spot the pattern, we'll know when we're in one. I kind of alluded to it at the top of the video, that we can look inwards. We can perform some self-investigation. And cards on the table, I'm not a counsellor or psychotherapist. I'm just a fellow traveller who's deeply fascinated by the psychological architecture of counselling modalities. So I read up on them. I want to share them with you here as a bridge to the therapeutic space, the reparative experience you can have with a qualified person in therapy. And to that end, I've put some links to the counselling directory and UK registry for therapists and counsellors in the description. So if you find that anything here that we uncover alone is too heavy to burden, then you can find a professionally qualified counsellor to go on that journey with you. So this video is not intended to replace the therapeutic space or offer anything clinical. What can we do? Well, we want it to be an independent tool, right, for you to use as a lens to look at your life and your feelings and behaviours through a theoretical lens that you can accept the bits of it that you like and reject the bits of it that you don't. You can grab a scrap piece of paper or your favourite notebook and journal this out, right? Look back over the last week, find an interaction that left you feeling a bit miffed, a bit let down, and write it, the story of it exactly how it happened. Leave nothing out. There's no judgment on what you're writing down. There's no scrutiny. There's no mark scheme. Just move the pen across the page freely. And if you go on off on a tangent, then that's fine, because you never know where you might end up, somewhere important, hopefully. But at the end of that writing, just notice the feeling that you were left with and see how familiar it is and how often it comes up and with who it comes up with most often. And the scrap piece of paper is going to work fine for that exercise. But if you wanted something a bit more structured, I've created a 3-prompt journal and introduced some basic psychodynamic theory over at beneaththerepeat.com. But either way, the pages are your private sacred laboratory for you to do some investigation and see what you might find. So I appreciate you taking the time and spending it with me. And let's continue to look beneath the repeat.